Welcome, everybody. We have a few more people joining us. If you want to put in the chat your name and where you're from, we got lots of classes tonight. Okay, so welcome. I am Shanna Bradley. I am the founder and director of Global Birth Community. And I just wanted to get on and share with you guys all the good, bad, and ugly, mostly good, of being a doula. So I have been a doula for a decade now, and I just finished my student midwifery. I will be sitting for my licensure hopefully next month. That is the plan, and will be a midwife as well. And I just spent the last year and a half in the Philippines doing my international student midwifery. So we just came back to the States last week for weddings. We have two weddings this summer, one Saturday for one son, and then in 6 weeks, another son. So it is pretty busy over here. I am a mother of six. And so I'll share a little bit about their kind of my why to becoming a doula. And I really want to spend some time just sharing a little bit and then opening up for all of your questions because I know how there was so much I didn't know when I started. And so I want to be here to doula you guys as you go through this journey. So be ready with your questions. So, a little bit about my story. This is me. So, I'm 40, almost 41. And I graduated high school at 17, got married at 18, had my first baby at 19. This is actually my third baby. So, I'm looking kind of old in this picture. She is 15 and a half. So, if you do the math on that. So, my husband, shortly after we got married, my husband joined the military. He's a couple years older than me. And we actually moved to a military base when I was like 7 months pregnant. So he actually joined the military. And then a week later, we found out I was pregnant. And a week later, he left for basically the first 7, 8 months of my pregnancy. So it was a very interesting pregnancy. And then I gave birth at a military hospital. So my first birth was really traumatic. I was 19. All my friends were in college. I was like, you just show up at the hospital and you give birth and it's great, right? Like that's just, you just do it. And it was not great. It was very traumatic. And they didn't explain things. There was, I believe I had a postpartum hemorrhage. All these things happened and it was really scary and really traumatic. 2 years later, I had another son in a non-military hospital, and it was very boring and non-traumatic. And in between there, I became an EMT. And so I just thought, why was the first birth so traumatic and this birth was so boring and plain? And what made it different? And so I started to look into birth and reading books on birth and birth in America, and really had the heart of, I really want everyone to have like more of my second birth and not my first birth. And what can make that difference? And so I didn't even know what a doula was at that point. And I think that's when I first heard about midwives because they are 21 and almost 21. This month they'll be 21 and 19. And so yeah, I just that's when I first heard of midwives. So I didn't have a midwife in my first couple labor and deliveries. And so I really started to have a heart and passion for that. And already working in the medical field, I knew, some of those ins and outs. And so with my third, is my first daughter, is when I really started to look at birth a lot differently with that one moving forward. So I've had five hospital births. The first four were epidurals in inductions in some way, shape, or form with Pitocin. The fifth one was a natural unmedicated birth in the hospital. And then our sixth one was an unmedicated home birth. So my husband, until I got into birth work, was really not all about home birth. And eventually he came around. So I think he would be on board with, having home births from this point on. But it took a very long time, like 18 years to get him on board. So a lot of people uh, go into birth work as a doula because of one of two things. Generally, they had a traumatic birth and they don't want others to have a traumatic birth like they did, or they had the most beautiful birth and it's like instant, Instagram perfect, and they want everyone to have that birth. So that's the majority of people who go into becoming a birth worker. And then there's a small percent that hasn't given birth yet and they experienced birth usually in a really positive way through watching a sibling being born or something along that lines, and or they just have a heart for birth, and so they go into birth work. But the majority have already given birth and they've had one or the other experience, and they want to come alongside women in that. So I want to ask you, ladies, if you're willing to share, um, which one do you fall into? Given birth and it was traumatic, given birth, it was perfect, haven't given birth yet, but the Lord just opened you up to birth in one way, shape, or form. So if anybody would like to share.
I can share.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kezia, and I am from Richmond, Virginia. I fall under the traumatic part. With my first daughter, I didn't have a doula, but with my second pregnancy, I did. But the first time that I met her was the day of delivery, so because of scheduling. And I had a lot of issues with a lot of the disparities that I experienced with my second child, because she was diagnosed with Down syndrome and a congenital heart defect. And so that experience, even during, the perinatal and then postpartum and then the loss. I don't want, another mom to have to go through that. And so my focus has been on perinatal loss, bereavement, grief doula, because there was a lot that I didn't get. And now I'm learning a lot more that there is a need for more of bereavement doulas, and the process that your whole body goes through, just like, if you had a live birth and had a healthy baby. So that's why.
Thanks for sharing. The Zoom I just came off of leading into this class was a group of women in Richmond. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Um, I don't have any children of my own. I did have a miscarriage, and I didn't know at the time that there was such a thing as bereavement, which would have been amazing. But I think for the past 30, 40 years, I've taken care of many children in a lot of different capacities between nannying and teaching. So I always felt pretty amazing being able to help a mom with whatever situation she was dealing with at home. So I'm excited about this.
Awesome. Thanks. Anybody else want to share? What's bringing them here? Just reading chat. All right. All right. So I will share a little bit about, man, that sun. It was so great until the class started. Um, So there are birth and labor doula. So a birth doula, labor doula is the same thing. They can just go by either or. And so they come alongside of women during pregnancy, birth, labor, postpartum for the first few weeks, generally the first couple weeks up to 6 weeks. And then a postpartum doula usually steps in as soon as the mom returns from wherever she gave birth, or with sometimes after those first 2 weeks, or whoever they have as support already, like if it's the mother, mother-in-law, the husband, and then they go back to work or go home after, 2 weeks, a month, that's usually when a postpartum doula might step in as well. Bereavement and loss. So this can be anything from pregnancy loss to early infant loss, generally pregnancy loss or stillbirth. And then fertility is to come alongside, and it's more like fertility coaching, and then adoption, and then there's many more. So the word doula comes from the word doulo, which is servant or doulos, servant. And so they had archaeologists. It's kind of a weird story, but they had archaeologists that were looking at like artifacts and different drawings, like ancient drawings, and they saw that there was women supporting women during labor and delivery, but they weren't like providing, they weren't like midwives. So they're like, what do we call these women that are supporting these other women through labor? And they were men, they were two men. And so they went back and found the word doulos, so servant, and doula is a woman servant. So they really thought woman serving a woman during birth. And so that's where the terminology came in the 60s. And so after that, they actually started DONA, Doulas of North America. That was the first doula group. And we started to have women come back and support women. But even back all the way from the beginning of time, since we've been giving birth, there has been other women supporting women during labor and delivery. And then once we started to institutionalize birth, we got farther and farther away from that. And no one was seeing birth, experiencing birth as we made this huge shift to delivering in the hospital. And so then we kind of lost that of women supporting women because they weren't participating anymore and being there. You know, your mom would be there and your aunts and your sisters. And so everyone would be really supportive of birth and understand birth, and they would just continue that process. And so in the late 60s, when DONA was brought together, there started to be a movement back to that of women coming alongside. That started in home birth because doulas weren't allowed into the hospitals yet. And then that has grown over the years since the 60s. And so what started as labor and birth doulas, now there's postpartum, bereavement, fertility, so on and so forth. And so we currently we provide birth or labor doulas, postpartum doulas, bereavement doulas, and we will have a lactation program soon as well later this year. So, and then fertility is down the line as well, but we're not quite there. So those are many options as far as what that looks like. And a lot of people do multiple ones. So a lot of people will be birth and postpartum or birth and bereavement, and they tend to add to it. But we'll talk a little bit about what might be the best fit to start with, because it could depend on just your situation. So being on call. So this is the big difference between a birth doula and a postpartum doula. So birth doulas are on call 24/7, generally starting at 37 weeks to 42 weeks or till delivery. So the full term of that pregnancy. And then postpartum doulas, on the other hand, are scheduled and it's pre-scheduled for shift work, and it's not the on-call schedule like a labor or birth doula. And so how do we do that? So I have 6 kids and they range. My youngest is 3. And so, I've done this for going on 11 years. Um, I've had little kids the whole time. Actually, I was pregnant with my daughter when I became a doula, and then had a baby after that. So it's actually kind of funny to go to the hospital with a laboring mom when you're like really pregnant and they're like, "Wait, which one is the patient?" And I'm like, "It's her, not me." But being on call can be really difficult. So that's something we navigate and talk about a lot in the class of how do we do that if you already have kids or if you have another job. And so that can be one of the most exhausting or hardest parts of being a doula if you're on the labor delivery side, because you're kind of slave to your phone. And I take my phone everywhere with me. I take it in the bathroom with me. It's always next to me. Like if I hear it vibrate or there's a phone call, I have to go answer it because I just don't know if, it's time, because labor is so unpredictable. Now, and the other thing too is if you have a client that's even like 1 month apart, you're still most likely overlapping and always being on call. So that can be really hard. You have to schedule like special events or vacations like a year ahead. So I train doulas overseas, domestically across the US, and I have to plan those trips like a year ahead of time so that I don't have moms calling me and, wanting me to be their doula and then I, can't do a trip. So that is a really hard part about doula life is the on-call part. There are ways that you can work with a partner and kind of, take call. So people do that, or they work with an agency where they share a call with others as well. But most people are solo doulas and they have to just be on call all the time. We talk about how to get a backup doula and what that looks like. I have never used a backup doula while I was in the country. I've had one birth where I was leaving the country to go to the Philippines to do a doula training. And she knew that when she signed on with me really late, kind of in her pregnancy. And I was going to be gone for 2 weeks to do a doula training and teach in the Philippines. And so um, she knew that there was a chance. And she delivered before I came back. So then my backup doula did step in. But I've never had two births at the same time where I've needed a backup doula. I did have two births at the same time, Thanksgiving week, the day before, 2 days before Thanksgiving, one day, like this one time, but one actually delivered before the other one ended up going to the hospital, and they were two different hospitals. So I left one after birth and after the postpartum period, and then went and met the other one for the next birth. So I just had one back to back. But that's only happened once in 10 years. And so even as a student midwife, very rarely have I ever had overlapping births. And that's when, you're working in really busy practice. So it can happen. So we do talk about having a backup doula for things like that, or sickness or kid sickness, or whatever that looks like. So backup doulas are a big part of that as well. Finding somebody who's like-minded, who practices similarly, because you just never know when there might be an emergency. And it also gives you a whole lot of other benefits that we talk about in class, but really having someone else to debrief with and do skills with, to do education with, it's really good to have a community if possible. So let me move this over. So some of the training options to think about um, are, do you want online or in person? So pre-COVID, basically all doula trainings were in person. There wasn't really online options, or very few of them. And then with COVID, everything went online, and we had already started training doulas. And I said, I will never teach and train online. And then COVID happened, and I didn't really have a choice. And I've actually really enjoyed doing online training because I've been able to train women from 49, I think, 49 different countries, which I wouldn't be able to do in person. Now, we have done doula trainings in multiple countries, but definitely not 49. And so that really opens up the opportunity. But the downside is it is harder to get those hands-on skills. So we actually offer, usually annually, an in-person doula skill day where people can come who are past students, and they can come and get those advanced skills, do the hands-on and that sort of thing. We also do in-person trainings as well, but sometimes we add in those advanced doula skill days for anybody who's already a doula to come and do those things. So I miss the hands-on part. That is my favorite part. I do prefer in person, but online has been a real blessing to be able to train hundreds and hundreds of women all over around the world that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So it has its pros and cons. So we do offer both. Like I said, I just came back to the States from the Philippines, and now we will be offering several different in-person trainings here shortly. So we're looking at Tucson and Phoenix, Gilbert, actually. Tucson and Gilbert coming up, and then we'll be doing one in Mexico. If you want to do doula training in Mexico, you could do that. There'll be an end where you can actually go to Cancun if you want, but the doula training's actually at a birth center in the middle of nowhere. We are looking at Greenville, South Carolina, if you are interested in that. So there are a few coming up. We'll also have one in Indiana, probably in September. That's the next one. And bereavement. So there'll be two, if you're interested in bereavement in person, they're both, one's in Greenville and one's in Travelers Rest. So one's in June and one's in August. So there is an instructor for that. Her name is Sarah. So I know she told me, I'm pretty sure those are the dates. So if you want to do in person, you can do it in South Carolina, and it's actually cheaper to do it in person. Um, so do you want in person or online, or do you want some kind of hybrid? We do, uh, in my mind, the best of both worlds as far as hybrid goes. So we do live classes that are 2 hours per class, and we do it for 5 sessions or 4 sessions, depending on the course. And then you have your own self-paced online portal that you do the videos and the homework in. So you have one part that's, a cohort that you get to ask questions, do activities live, and then the rest is through the portal. So you have some online that is all portal, where you just like get on, it's all self-paced. There's no facilitator or instructor. And then there's some that is all facilitator, instructor, all lecture and nothing else. So we do a combination of both. So you have so for the birth, you have 10 hours of live and then about 15 hours of self-paced for videos and things like that. And then postpartum is 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours of live, and then about the same as far as videos and things. So kind of see what that looks like for your schedule. We also offer self-paced where you watch if you can't make the lives, you can watch the recordings. So if you have a class or you have, a Bible study on Monday nights or whatever that is, we do also set it up that way. That works a lot for people that live in other countries where the time frame is just in the middle of the night and it would be like 2 a.m. So we started the self-paced program for people living overseas as well, but we now offer it to anybody who that fits better in their schedule. So it's not as fun because you don't get to interact, but you do get to like follow the cohort and do it on your own time. So think about that. And then classroom or self-paced. Do you want a facilitator, somebody that kind of encourages you and keeps you on track, or do you want to do it self-paced so that you can work it into a really busy schedule? So think about those options as well. In person is generally a 2-day training for birth or postpartum. Bereavement is also a 2-day training that Sarah will be offering. So that's another thing. Do you want to spend it all day Friday and Saturday and just knock it out? But those are really your options. So online, in person. If it's online, do you want self-paced or do you want a facilitated class? Birth philosophy and language. This is a big one, especially in the last 5 years. So a lot of organizations and midwifery schools have gone to birthing person, birthing partner, chest feeding, body feeding. There's actually midwifery books that no longer say woman. And so looking into the organization that you want to do training with, our organization actually uses traditional language where we say mother, father. We talk about how God created our bodies. We're a Christian organization. And so we use more all traditional language. But looking into that, because I have had a lot of people that have transitioned over to us or cross-certified because the philosophy of birth for the organization that they were going to train with doesn't really align with their beliefs or how they want to practice. So look into that and make sure some of them, like Dona, has and I'm not sure if you can get this prior to training, but they have paperwork that you have to sign that you are committing to. And a lot of people have a hard time with some of those things that have been added within the last few years. So just know what the birth philosophy is. Some are very natural and more home birth based. Some are more intervention and hospital birth based. Some are very more liberal, some are more conservative. So that might be really important to you to make sure you align with the organization that you'll train with as a representation. And then you might have paperwork and things that you have to sign as commitment. So time frame and requirements. This can be a big one too. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, who reached out to me recently, and she was saying that she has a birth coming up, her sister-in-law, and she was like, "Can I get this training done by this date?" And I was like, "Sure, that's completely up to you." So our birth training is 1 month. It's 5 weeks long, and our postpartum is 4 weeks long. And then most people, I think like 90% of our students take both, and we offer them back to back on purpose. It's a great foundational to do both. We offer a better deal that way too. But you can do it as fast or as slow as you want. So find out what the time frame is. So DONA, I think the average time frame to do a DONA program is 6 to 12 months, and you have up to 2 years to finish, I believe. And some are, even longer than that, and some are shorter than that. So we do have people that finish in that 5 week period or that 4 week period. You can get the book requirements and start on some of the assignments ahead of time. You can do that now if you want, if you're like, hey, I'm ready to sign up. But find out what those requirements are. A lot of organizations do not require certifying births for birth doulas, but some do. So like DONA and Kappa, I believe Kappa still does, they require 3 certifying births. But those are really, there might be 1 or 2 other big ones, but most organizations no longer require certifying births. And the reason is because COVID made it so a lot of hospitals restricted visitors, and they made it that you couldn't get into a hospital unless you were a certified doula. But most certifications, you couldn't become certified if you couldn't get into the hospital. So it was just this, big mess of how are you supposed to accomplish this if you can't get in, and you can't get in until you have accomplished it. So a lot of organizations have moved away from certifying births because the goal of the training is to give you a really solid foundation. Attending those births, you will learn something from every single birth you attend, but attending the births doesn't make you necessarily a doula. The education and the skills give you that foundation to be a great doula. And then of course we want you to do births, but look into that too, as far as are you required to have certifying births or not? And that would just be for labor and birth and labor. So look into that and see, does that fit into your time frame as well? We offer a lifetime membership. So this is another one that falls under time frame and cost. So there's no time frame for finishing our training. If it takes you 1 month or if it takes you 1 year or even 2 years, there's no fee for extensions or anything like that. And then for recertification, most organizations require you to recertify with continuing ed every 2 years, some 3 years. We have a lifetime certification because we know if you're doing this work, you're going to continue to learning on your own. You're going to continue to read books. You're going to, do an in-person hands-on with us or something like that, where you'll continue to learn on your own. You don't need to necessarily prove that to anyone. But I do say if you want to send me a check every 2 years, I will not be mad about that. If you just want to send me a check and say, hey, it's 2 years, here's some extra money, I'm totally okay with that. But we don't want to have that barrier of recertification. We train, like I said, women from 49 different countries. That's not as easy to do when we go train women in Africa and in the Philippines and in like Kyrgyzstan for them to, have funds to recertify every 2 years. So that's something to think about too. So money. So it's a big investment for you to become a doula and to invest in yourself for that training. So what does that look like on the flip side of that when you're done? What is the going rate for your area? So this really varies from place to place. So I actually have like a cheat sheet of rates for small, medium, and large cities that we have in our training. But you can usually get on and find out what doulas are charging in your area. And this varies again, like it's really city size. So if you're East Coast, West Coast, they're going to charge more. And the closer you get to the middle, which currently I'm in the state of Indiana, as you get closer to the Midwest, it's less. If you're in a big city like a capital, you're going to be able to charge more than if you're in the middle of a cornfield. So that does vary, but most doulas charge between 800 at the lowest end, all the way up to about 1,500 to 2,000 on the higher end. So if you're in California, you're going to be charging on the higher end. But if you're in a small town in Indiana, you might be charging on the lower end closer to 800. So it really has changed a little bit too with insurance and Medicaid, and that looks different from state to state. So some states reimburse doulas through Medicaid for like $500, and some reimburse them for like $1,500. So it really depends on a lot of different factors. But the average is, I would say, 800 to 1,200 is pretty common within the area. And if you add more things, so if you're, doing placenta encapsulation or photography, or you offer special postpartum meals or whatever that looks like, you can even have larger packages and bring in more income. And I also encourage people to partner with people so you don't have to do everything, and be able to create even bigger packages that might bring someone else into the picture. So you might not be a photographer, but you might have a good friend who's like an amazing newborn photographer. And so you partner together, or you have a really good friend who's a lactation specialist and she's amazing at that, and you add that into a higher package. So you don't necessarily have to do all of those things on your own to offer some of these different skills and add-ons. So something to think about. But all of our courses are actually less than what one doula client should be. We want to have as few barriers to becoming a doula as possible. So just getting one client will pay for your class. Can I do this if I work full-time or part-time? So I get this question asked a lot. So you can, but how are you going to navigate that? So sometimes people work full-time and they'll take PTO or a sick day if they end up getting called to a birth. Some people have flexible enough jobs. You can do it, but it's difficult. But usually it's just like any other business. Like I said, you're generally a solo business owner. And so it takes a few years on average, 1 to 3 years, just like any other small business, to get enough income to potentially quit a full-time job or replace that full-time. I will say that if you work as a postpartum doula, you're going to get there a lot faster because you can schedule it and it's not a one and done where birth is. And if you do both, that's even better because then you can get that steady income as a postpartum doula that's scheduled. And then you can use usually a lot of the same clients that you have for birth, you'll have for postpartum. And if you have a postpartum client and you put it in your contract, and say, hey, if I have a birth and I have to be gone and I miss hours on your contract, we just add it to the end. And since they just gave birth, they understand the importance of what you're doing. And so it's a great combination. If you want to go full time, I encourage you to have postpartum in that because that makes it the easiest and quickest to get a full time hours and still do births if you want. Part-time, same thing. How are you going to navigate when that birth comes? I will say most labors and birth happen at night. I would say the majority. Now, they do like go into the next day, but a lot of births happen at night. So if you have a job that's, you know, normal hours and you have some PTO or you have some time that you can take and you're not taking a ton of clients starting out and you save that time off, you most likely will go into the labor process at night and will be able to, you know, call off the next day. But again, it really depends on the job. But it is possible. I've trained a lot of people who have worked while they built their doula business. So, what do I do about childcare? So, if you have kids, this is a big one that goes back to the on-call. So, I have used in-laws. I have used like homeschool mom helpers or really good babysitters. And then there's times where my husband's been around. But a big one, we homeschool, but a big one is homeschool girls. And so a homeschool girl that can drive is worth her weight in gold. So um, they're usually from bigger families. They understand, you know, the responsibility of childcare. They've done a lot of childcare and they have a flexible school schedule. And so those are the best. And there are ways to plug into homeschool communities and find these girls. And they usually are really supportive of birth. And so those are always my go-to is high school girls that are homeschooled who can drive. Those are top notch, perfect when you have small kids and you need to run out the door quickly. So, but there are other things that you can do, but that is a hard one for a lot of people if they live in a place without family or a lot of support. So, Created to Birth is our doula training, and Created to Nurture is our postpartum training through Global Birth Community. So, this is my family. My daughter is actually 3 years old. So, and these boys are both getting married. So, he's getting married and then he's getting married. So, it's kind of funny. So, that is not our most recent picture. But it's also not that old because it's only about 2.5 years old. But everybody looks a little bit different there than that picture. But our goal is to make doula training accessible to all communities and all cultures, and we make it very easily translated and interpreted. So we do offer it when we go abroad, and it can be translated and interpreted the whole training. And so our heart really is to see all women have access to the support that they need for the birth and to achieve the birth that they want. And we want to do that, especially in their own communities, their own language, and their own cultures. So again, we've done trainings all across the world and we'll continue to do that, which is a fun thing too for you. If you go with us as alumni, you also have an opportunity to join us on those trips and help to co-teach and participate as well and be a part of training more doulas in the future as well. So that's a fun thing that a lot of our students like to do later down the road as well. Even if they're like, I don't want to teach, but I want to come along and do X, Y, and Z, we like to integrate that as well. So especially like the trip to Mexico. And then when we do in-person trainings, like in Mexico or Arizona or Indiana, if you've already done our online, you can come to our in-person training for free. Or if you want to go back and see what we've done, We just had a student who she lives in India. She's married to an Indian. And she took our training, oh, maybe like 5 years ago or something. And she just reached out and she's about to go to a birth and she hasn't been to a birth in a while. And I said, go back through our course. Like we have added so many amazing things in the last 5 years. And she's like, what does that cost? And I was like, nothing. You just jump on and check out our portal. And there's so much more in there than when you took the course. And so we offer that as well as kind of that continuing ed. And we have more uh, workshops and trainings coming up here in the near future where we're adding like-minded people, chiropractors and marketers and social media managers and all CPAs, different people to come alongside and share how to grow your business and give you more skills and education. So we are building a tapestry of birth work education as well. So again, you don't have to do child or you don't have to do continuing ed, but we are going to have more opportunity for you to do that. So, is now the right time for you? That's the big question. You guys are all here. You know, you have some calling to birth work. So I want to share with you, for us, we have the flipped classroom approach online, and that will start in June. So birth doula training starts Monday nights in June, and it is 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. Postpartum will follow that. Same thing, Monday nights, 7 to 9. And then a bundle deal. So our birth doula training is $697 and our postpartum is $597. But if you bundle them together, it's an amazing deal at under $1,000. And like I said, most first clients, you can charge $800. So you can you could definitely get either training for free or be really close to it if you do both. Our bereavement doula training will start in September. It is 10 weeks long and it's only an hour class. So it's 10 weeks, but a shorter class as well. And for Mother's Day, because why not? It's Mother's Day this weekend. So starting today after this class, we will have $100 off code for Mother's Day for you guys to take a part of if you're interested and ready to sign up. And that will run through midnight on Mother's Day. So then just this weekend. But Mommy 26 will get you $100 off birth, postpartum, the bundle, or the bereavement doula training. So what questions do you guys have? And just because I always forget this slide, join me for your dream job. That's such a good picture of me, way better than what I look like right now. But what questions do you ladies have?
Sorry, I came in a little bit late. So just want to
Yeah.
clarify. Um, so did I hear you say that there's the online live version or there's an in-person 2-day training?
Yes. So we will have one in Fort Wayne, probably like Indiana, probably like the 24th, 25th of September, um,
Okay.
or prior to that, and then bereavement will follow that. So we're trying to work that out, when that will be. But there might be one in Indiana. And then we are looking at doing one in Gilbert, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. That will be potentially in October. And then we are looking at Greenville, South Carolina. We'll have one of those this year as well. But there is two in that area for bereavement, one in June and one in August. So we're trying to do some of those. We have one in Montana coming up as well. She has not gotten back to me on what the dates are for that. So, and I will say, Sarah, who is our bereavement doula trainer, she is expecting later this year. And so we're getting some classes in before she has her next baby, and then she'll have a break. So there won't be any bereavement until February or March, and then we'll go back to doing some more in person. But I'm excited because I've been overseas and I have not gotten to do in person for a little while in the US. And so I'm excited to go to all these places that people have asked me to go to. We just got to get it on the calendar. So, and if you do
That's
it online, yeah, Lily, if you do it online and then you're like, hey, I want to do the in person, you just join the in person. You don't have to pay twice.
okay. Okay.
Where are you
And
at?
then I'm
Like,
in Amarillo, Texas.
okay, well, if you want us to come to Texas, you can also host. So.
Okay. And then who teaches the birth and who teaches the
Yeah.
postpartum?
I teach birth, postpartum, and then Sarah teaches the bereavement.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions do you ladies have?
Hi, ladies. I'm Chin. I'm part of Global Bird community. I'm just gonna read the question of Amy here. So you mentioned people cross training. What does that mean, and what does it look like?
Yeah. So a lot of people have done doula training in the past or maybe not finished it completely and they want to work with a faith-based organization. So we are a Christian organization and so they want to be able to use the terminology of woman, mother, father, all those things. So we do offer cross certification, which is a much less fee than starting over, and you just take parts of our training and you can do that self-paced and then you can take our exam, and then you will become a global birth community doula as well. So we offer that for birth and postpartum. It is self-paced, or you can just join a cohort. So if you're like, hey, I've, you know, been trained or certified with DONA, but I, want to maybe switch, then you can join the lives and be part of like the June class, July class, whatever, or you can do the self-paced version and go through that as well. So you kind of have some options. So you're not required to join the lives. But there are a few parts of the training to refresh on. It's always fun to join and be a part of it if you want. So it is $3.99, and then you submit different things to show that you already had the training, and then you complete a few tasks, and then you get cross-trained. Jen, did you have any other questions? Or was there any in the chat? I'm really bad about the chat. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'll just read if there's one, if there's another question in the chat. But I would just like you to, share with the ladies, because in the past Q&As, there has been questions about certifications, and I'm not sure if anyone knows, but in other organizations, um, they require you to pay for your certification aside from the enrollment fee. So what it's like in global birth community, and if certification is um so you only certify once and you're not gonna pay an additional fee for a recertification after a few years.
Yeah. So some of the big organizations, because they have instructors and then they have the organization, you pay the organization a fee and get like a packet, and that's what you submit everything to, and then you pay for the training from the instructor. So some of the big organizations, there's two different fees is what you're talking about. With us, we have one fee, exactly what it says on the website, and then we also offer two payment options when you check out if you want to do like four payments over like I think the course of 3 months. So there are some payment options there as well, again, to make it as accessible as possible. And then no recertification fees unless you really want to send me a check every 2 years. So yeah. Nobody's ever done that though. No one's ever taken me up on that offer, but so
I had another question.
yeah.
So I'm in full-time ministry. So would maybe the route for me be like to start with mostly postpartum so that I can schedule those and then as I maybe transition out or something different, like then do some birth or
Well, as far as training goes, it they flow really well into each other.
okay.
And depending on, and I know you told me, but I can't remember. Depending on what your ministry looks like, a lot of the times the women who want you for postpartum may also want you for their birth. And so even if you don't want to like put it out there and fully go birth yet, it's good to have
Sure.
that because God just opens those doors and women will see that in you and they'll just this is how some other people actually get involved too, is they're like, people keep asking me to attend their births. And then I didn't even know what a doula was. And so I have a good friend who attended like 8 births before she ever heard of a doula because people just saw that in her. And so that might also be your story. Where do you work with
Yeah,
teens?
I've attended 3 births,
Okay.
and the last one I was asked if I was the doula.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but I want to be someday.
Well,
So,
you were serving her, right? And
right.
so, yeah, you were. Yeah. What other questions do you ladies have? Where are you ladies at? Because I didn't read the chat, or if Chen wants to tell me. So Amarillo, where else? Big cities,
So
small towns.
Keisha is from Richmond, VA.
Oh, right.
Sophie is from Austin. Donna is from New Jersey.
Okay.
And yeah, Noelle is from California.
Okay. And Portland. Okay.
Ah, yeah, and Amy is in Portland.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, kind of everywhere. So yeah, Portland is going to charge more than I don't know, Richmond does pretty good. I have a really good friend in Richmond that I trained and yeah, she actually makes more money than me. So so it kind of depends. It depends on who your clientele are. She does work with a doula agency and so I think they charge 12 or 1500 but she doesn't get all of that, but she does have a partner. So that works too, depending on, how long the labor is and things like that. Childbirth ed, I didn't say that either. We also offer childbirth education as an instructor, and that is a really good thing to add on to your package as well. It really is great for your clients and it makes your job actually easier when they're more empowered and have more of that education behind them. And so, yeah, that's a great thing to add on, down the road too. So you can schedule that too. So if you want to do something more scheduled, you can start with childbirth education and you can go from there. And then when we get lactation, again, that's kind of schedulable, if that's a word, schedulable. Um, versus labor can be a little trickier. So
Okay, here I see another question from
okay.
Donna. Hi, Donna. Uh, she's asking if we recommend where and how to get insurance.
Yeah. So back in the day, like there was only CNMF, and now there's lots of them. And I actually use my homeowners insurance. And I have an umbrella policy through my homeowners because it was actually cheaper than going with just a doula. So I have an umbrella policy for like 1 million and all of the things. So you can sometimes add it on and it was just a lot cheaper that way. And or you can go through you can go through a company that does it. So more and more companies are offering just straight doula insurance for your business. But it doesn't have to be doula specific, usually because it's really just a liability policy. And so I don't know personally anybody, and I've trained hundreds and hundreds of doulas that have ever had a claim, but it is good practice. But I do encourage my students to be debt free and build a business in a certain way to be able to, once they have clients or so many clients, take that income to then pay for those things as they build. So if you're only taking one client or you only have one client or you don't have a client yet, it's not necessary, in my opinion, to get that insurance off the bat and pay, say, $300-400 out before you even have a client. But once you start having steady income and having more clients, then it is something that we talk about integrating in as part of your budget and figuring out how to add that as the income comes in. But if you're only, and I have some doulas who, they're grandmas and they do, they come alongside so they can, doula with their own daughters and daughter-in-laws, and then they only do 1 or 2 births a year, they don't need liability insurance. But if you're like, yeah, this is going to be my job, like I'm going to take 2 to 3 clients a month, then yes, that's a different story. But you don't have to have it. There is no law. It is good practice, but you don't have to do it if you're like, hey, I think I might have one birth in the next 3 to 4 or 5 months. You can work that into it as the business grows. So what else? Okay. Yeah.
As a Christian doula, like, do you make pretty clear your beliefs and like your language and all of those things? How do you navigate that with maybe clients who feel differently or
Yeah. So I actually have a non-for-profit birth organization that comes alongside immigrants, refugees, and teen moms. And we provide doula services and childbirth education. And then we train doulas. That's kind of where this all came from. And I work with a lot of Muslims. And so and all kinds of religions. And that's true when we serve overseas too. And really in descriptions and the way we word things or on our websites, when you're saying like just different things like women and mothers and families, and they can kind of get that sense. So I don't have to necessarily say, hey, I'm a Christian doula, but if it says, hey, I've done a lot of overseas missions work or, things like that, it's obvious. And I do like to pray with my clients, and I'm going to pray for you ladies at the end of this. But and we pray in class as well at the end, and we pray for each other. But I don't pray for all of my clients out loud, and that's totally okay, but I still pray for them. I pray for them when I'm on their way to their house. I pray for them after, but they do know, like it's not, and a lot of people hire me because I'm a Christian. But I've worked with a lot of people who aren't, and yeah, so you just kind of have to have discernment, and we talk about that as well too, as a Christian doula training, of what that looks like and how do we integrate our faith, and do we add it here, or we don't add it, or what is the demographic that we're trying to reach. And so everybody does it a little bit differently, but nowadays, if you're using, honestly, if you're not using certain language, or you are using certain language, it kind of gives that idea. And so yeah, yeah,
So we have another question
yeah.
here from Amy. I also work with a Muslim community in Portland. Do you have more information with how you work with Muslims or refugees?
Yeah. So I have a lot of experience with refugees and lived in the most diverse square mile in America, which is right outside of Atlanta. And I served there. That's actually where I became a doula and served for the first 3 years of my birth work ministry. And I worked with women, all refugees, for 3 years. And so a lot of experience there. But Muslims, as far as being a believer, it works fine. And even praying with them, because they believe we're praying to the same God. So as long as we're praying to God, and it's the Jesus part that they don't, agree with. And so there's a lot of commonality there, and a lot of ways to just integrate my beliefs, but in a gentle way. Like, Muslims are really happy to pray with you, and yeah. And so the Jesus part is the part that we split on, but I've had amazing conversations with Muslims, and yeah, they've never had a problem with me being a Christian. So yeah, I do have a lot. I could talk about immigrants and refugees all day long. So if you want to talk more about that, Amy, you just let me know. Okay. Any other questions?
There's another question from Sophie. Is the bereavement course more Christian focused as well?
Yes, yes, for sure. So it comes at, and I will, Sophie, I don't know if I told you this, but if you go to Created Birth on YouTube, um, it has I want to say, 5 things not to say to a lost mom, something along that lines. And Sarah teaches that, and it's free. And if you, Sophie, if you email me or text me, or however we've been talking, I'm so sorry. I know we've been talking. I just can't remember. I think text or WhatsApp, however, Sophie, just let me know, and I can send you that video if you can't find it. But if you go to Created to Birth, we have a lot, we have some public videos, and that is one of them that Sarah does. And you can get the idea for who she is as an instructor, but she's very much a believer, and a lost mom and a birth doula as well. But it comes at bereavement and loss from a Christian worldview. Yes. Yes. And it is hopefully getting some accreditation here in the next few months, which is awesome, because there's just not a Christian perspective on bereavement training really out there. So she's excited to get some of those continuing ed hours for midwives and other doulas. Yeah,
I actually sent the link
awesome.
in
Thank
the
you.
chat if you'd like to see that. I also remember last Q&A, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry, Lily. Last Q&A, some aspiring doulas asked if after you finish the course, would you guide them on how to, establish their online business if they want to share online that they are now a birth, postpartum, or bereavement doula?
yeah,
Because some I believe some trainings do not, touch on marketing. So can you explain to them?
Yeah. So our last class, we talk about marketing, business, best practices, and strategy for launching, as well as comfort measures and hands-on. And then Chen does our social media and she does websites and branding. And so she is full of information as well. We're going to do some classes and workshops, highlighting some of her knowledge and skills to pass along to you ladies as well. But our goal is to doula the doulas and just the multiplication. So I love doulaing and I love working with my clients, but I can only serve so many moms in one area. But training more midwives who can serve within their area really sends out that ripple effect and that multiplication. And so our goal is to make sure you thrive in this as well, so that you can really serve the community, the families in your own community. And so we don't just leave you. I talk to students constantly, and Rosette is down in mine. And mine, she's down in the corner, said. She does student engagement and will follow up and see like, hey, you haven't, gotten on in a while. You haven't finished your certification. Can we help in any way? Like, what's going on in your life? How can we be praying for you? And so we want to see doulas succeed and thrive and have as few barriers as possible, because we really see birth work as a ministry. And it's very much a spiritual battleground. And so we want to come alongside. We will start our monthly meetings again. We have not done that because I've been overseas, and so the time frame hasn't worked. But we'll have a monthly meeting called Birth Work is Ministry for anybody, whether you've trained with us or not, to jump on and debrief some things, go over some things, encourage each other, pray for each other, and really build community within this space because it's tough. Birth work is tough. You're on call, you're losing sleep. Doing ministry is tough. And you combine them, and I'll be honest, it can be really hard. And so we have lots of different ways. We'll have more education open to you, more workshops open to you, and these free monthly Zooms to be encouraged as well. But we're not leaving you without the skills and tools. And we also will have mentorship available between Sarah and I. You can pick a doula that you want to go through mentoring with to be able to build your business and get more clients as well, if that's something that you want to do. So.
Great. We have another
Yeah.
question, a few questions here from Kizia. I'm also a social worker and having the bereavement training as well as my background in trauma-focused care. I look forward to the training.
Awesome.
Yeah, we would love to see you there, Keisha.
I lost you, Chen. Doesn't say you're muted, but I can't hear you. Yeah, I can't hear you. I'm going to mute you and unmute you. Okay, you unmute you. It won't let me unmute you. You must have had something really important to say because that's how it always works. There. Okay. Nope.
Hello?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, there. Must have been my earphones. So from Sophie, some certifications require doing an actual birth or helping 2 to 3 postpartum moms to get fully certified. Is that the same for these?
Yes, so we don't have the certifying births because a lot of hospitals won't let you in if you're not certified. So you can't get certified because you don't have the births to get certified. So, but our postpartum, we do require 3 support for postpartum care, and that can look very different. And then that also involves breastfeeding observations. So those can be the same mom. So you can go serve a mom for like 2 hours or longer, a minimum of 2 hours, and then also do a breastfeeding observation. There's a checklist to look for like do you see this? Do you see a good latch? Do you see a bad latch? What does this look like? That thing you ask some questions. They do not have to be the same moms, but they generally are. So if you are serving to moms, say within your church, and two are breastfeeding and one is not, you can serve the three of them, and then ask another mom, hey, would it be okay if I observed just a breastfeeding session to finish my training? And a lot of women are open to that. So you do for postpartum serve three moms in a postpartum role, as well as three breastfeeding observations, which are generally, like I said, the same three ladies, but not always. So, and you can charge for those. So even though you haven't finished the certification, you've finished the training, you can charge for those things as well if you would like. So, anything else? Yes. Well, I'm so excited. I'm happy to answer more questions if you think of them later, or send us an email. I will send a follow-up if you guys are ready to join and you're interested in global birth community, and joining a group of like-minded Christian women. We'd love to have you and offer you Mommy 26 for $100 off any of the things that we offer. We'd love to have you in June or July or both. And I will just close really quick and pray for you guys as you step into the calling of birth work. So, dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for these ladies and each and every one of them that you brought here, and the ones that will watch this recording, Lord. I just thank you for the heart that you put into them to serve other women, especially in such a sacred season of labor, delivery, postpartum, when women and babies are so vulnerable, Lord. I just pray they be with each and every one of them and give them wisdom, discernment, and guide them to the right training, the right opportunities, and prepare the families that they'll be serving in the near future, Lord. I just thank you for each and every one of them, and just the ministry that you're calling into of birth work. And we just thank you and praise you in your name. Amen. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you were here at Global Birth Community. Birth work is ministry. Our team will be praying for you as you minister to the families in your community.